Okay, so we're now recording. So Abhinav, I want to ask you the first question, if that's okay. So tell me your kind of answer when you're ready. But are you able to kind of provide me with a bit of an insight into your background and current role, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, I'm in a higher education industry, I would say, where we focus on college admissions overseas, mostly to countries like US and UK, and we end up helping a lot of students and also athletes who kind of want to go to university, and basically, our job is really to mentor these students and then eventually also help them with the application process. We're helping a lot of families, and we help mostly students who are looking to go overseas. But then we're trying to create some scholarship programs, students who can't really afford the fee to go there, and trying to enable that side of education for them. And on a day-to-day basis, for me, because it is my own company, I was working for a few years, but last year I started my own company. So we have 2 to 3 members on the team right now. So it varies between just the business development activities to managing the team, leading them, and then of course the most important thing, which is talking to the families and the students we work with.
Brilliant. Thanks, Abhinav. That was great. So second question is around kind of what your thoughts are on the main barriers within development at the moment. So I'm going to ask you, what do you consider to be the main barriers within development at the moment, and how do you hope to help address them through studying on the Master of Leadership for Development?
I think the main barriers, especially in a country like India, living here, I think there's a lot of power structures when I think about sort of inequality when it comes to gender, there's a lot of power structures which are sort of hard to break through. Sometimes you can speak up, but speaking up is not enough. It doesn't really cause change, and in a lot of ways you're almost put down for speaking up, or people will find a way to you know sort of just shut you up, and that's a huge challenge, because someone who knows that something is not right and you want to make a change, you cannot just raise your voice. You actually have to do more than that and back it up with more things. So I do think for someone who doesn't have the resources, or even just the knowledge how to approach a larger change on a much larger level and scale, where there are governments or society norms involved, I think it's hard to cause change. So in a country like India per se, that ends up being a challenge. And I think also just in terms of education, I feel enabling students who cannot probably afford an education, how do you get them involved and make sure they have access to a quality education? That's just I think those things are, one is power structure, but then the other thing is also just, again, in a country like India, it's just the population versus the opportunities. It just doesn't add up, and lots of organizations are now trying to balance that. That how do you make sure that all the students that are out there get an education, all the children that are out there, but it's not such an easy thing to do. So there's lots of non-profit schools. I've been associated with one for a while, but we still need more and more of them. And even within non-profit schools, what I really feel is you need exit pathways eventually. That there's no point getting an education, but then you may not have the skills to go get employed somewhere. So I think it's the whole infrastructure that needs a lot of things. So I wouldn't say there's one or two things with the barriers. There's just a lot of aspects. And to address your second part of the question about why this program and why Master of Leadership for Development, I think it's just because I have all these ideas. I want to do a few things. I want to change things, but I think it's also a lack of access individually. That, like I said, that individuals like me or others, while we know we want to bring change, but we just don't know how to begin or where to begin. How do you make stakeholders work? How do what's that starting point? Where do you take it from there? I think just understanding that whole cycle is something that I'm interested in, and also just the leadership aspect of it, because it's an interesting program. It's not just about development, but it's also about how do you become a leader in development. And that is something that I also feel will just help me in my current role as well, because I truly believe that leadership, what was 20, 30 years ago, or even 10 years ago, it's completely different today. The people you work with, they expect transparency, they expect, more autonomy, more trust, versus 15 years ago, you can just assign a task to someone and just expect them to do it. So I think leadership is also changing, and it's important to be in sync with it. So yeah, I think overall this program really stood out to me, and that's why I'm here.
Brilliant. That was a great response. Thanks, Abhinav. That was great. And you have touched on this slightly, but I guess what are you kind of looking forward to most about starting this course in September? What are kind of the aspects of the course maybe that you're looking forward to?
Yeah. I'll just take a second and answer that.
That's fine. Just when you're ready, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So I think what I'm looking forward to is one, just of course the combination of combining leadership and development, and I've been a part of development where I've been a volunteer or I've been one of the people involved in an organization, but I think it'll be interesting to see how to be at the front end of it and how to lead that. So mixing those two skills is definitely something I'm looking forward to. And I think two other main things that I am very intrigued by is, one, the faculty, because the whole faculty comes from a background where everyone's done different things. Someone's done something in women empowerment, someone's been involved in the economy, and it's just very interesting to have these people around you and have access to them and understand from their experiences how they've gone about things. And then the second part I would also say is the students themselves, because I'm someone who's coming from India. I know a lot of other students are coming from Europe, from Africa. So everyone's been through like their own journey. And it'll just be interesting to learn from different people and what they've done and what they've achieved. And I'm pretty sure, I think discussing ideas, we'll find out that something that was done in Africa or something that was done in Europe, how can we implement some of those same things in India? So I think it's also about discussing and sharing those ideas and hopefully using them to implement in our own societies and countries.
Great, thank you. That's great. I think I'm definitely agreeing with you on this. The fact that when we had our first community at a distance kind of workshop, if you like, having so many different people from different parts of the world was so interesting. And just having everyone in this virtual room was great. So I think going forward, when you're in the course, you guys are going to benefit from that diversity more than really you realize at this point, because like you said, you're going to be learning from everyone who is experienced maybe similar situations but having to deal with it in different ways. So yeah, I'm excited to follow your guys' journey, that's for sure. So brilliant.
Yeah.
So the next question is around kind of specific themes in the course that maybe stood out to you when you were first considering back in the day applying to this course. So Abhinav, were there any specific themes in the Masters of Leadership for Development that stood out to you when you were applying, and could you elaborate on those themes?
Yeah, I think for me, like as I mentioned, the whole aspect of, I find leadership very intriguing. I think because it's just an ever evolving, it's always evolving. I'll actually start that again. Uh, so I think for me, the two things were again leadership and development. For me, I think leadership is the biggest thing, because it's something that's always evolving, it's always changing. And you might think that this style of leadership is good today and it just changes in a week. We've seen that with the pandemic. It's, I think every leader, everyone has to adjust to it, everyone has to accommodate to it. And you can have the biggest leaders in the world, you have to learn how to work virtually. You have to learn how to trust your colleagues a bit more because they are working from home. So there's lots of different aspects around leadership. So I think that was a big theme for me. And of course, the developmental side, I'd never thought that that's something I want to get involved in. And I think just reading through the course, it sparked that thing inside me where I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do, but I've just never really taken any sort of action to, get going. So it was also a way for me to take that first step and say that, look, let's do this, because all those things that you've thought about and you want to do, this can be the starting point of that. And I think the biggest thing for me, I was genuinely looking for a master's program, and I was very focused on distant learning also, because I didn't really want to quit my career and just put that on a halt for 2 years. So I was looking for distant learning, and I came across a lot of your typical MBAs and masters in finance, which were all very, very interesting, which was all I was considering other courses. But I slowly just realized that, look, where does that master's degree take me? Because for something like an MBA, if I'm doing something of my own, it might help me in my business, but I feel that there's enough information and enough mentors around me where I can learn those things, I can pick those things up. So my focus was not to study something that I know I have access to knowledge from other places. And it was more about finding something really interesting, really engaging, which will make me do something that I've always wanted to do, but I've never had the courage to do. And I think this course was perfect to sort of start that journey.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was great. And then two more questions. So the next one is around kind of the skills that you're hoping to develop through this course. You've touched on this previously, but could you tell me a little bit about the types of skills that you're hoping to develop through learning and studying on this course, Abhinav?
Yeah, I think the biggest skill is just to really understand. I mean, how do you bring change? Because uh, bringing about change is not something that it can just happen over a year. It takes decades and like a long, long time. So the idea is just to understand how do you approach that, and how are you also patient with it, because I feel you might want to change something today about your society, but the rest of the society may not be ready for that change. So also understanding where does the educational part come in. If you're trying to change something, why is that change important, educating your society community on that. And then how do you work with organizations, as I said, the power structures before, how do you get involved with all those sort of that whole infrastructure to begin change, and also taking a step back and understanding that why is this change important, answering that question first. I think that in its own thing is like a huge skill, because today there's lots of ideas that I have, but I also know a lot of those ideas, as I implement them, they may just break down after 6 months, or you may lose motivation to continue if you don't see enough results. So the idea is just how do you begin that? And also, I think, if you want to start your own sort of organization or nonprofit, how do you go about that? How do you hire people in a nonprofit? How do you go about funding? How do you go about involving stakeholders? And I think that whole aspect of it is also extremely important to understand, because while nonprofit is not really a business, it can still be run. You can run it like one. You may not want to take profits out of it, of course, because it is a nonprofit, but the operational aspect of it is still like a business. You still have to figure out, budgeting and those sorts of things. So I think that whole cycle, the whole chain is something that I'm looking forward to in this course. And those are the skills I really want to take away, because I feel once I have that knowledge, I'll be in a better place to sort of pursue those dreams that I do have as well.
Brilliant. That was a great response. And final question is around well-being. Now, the last 12 months, as you and I both know, has been just absolutely crazy. And I think the main thing we've all probably learned to do is be really resilient. But obviously, we need to have looked after our well-being in order to become kind of resilient and get through this. So Abhinav, do you have any tips on how you've been looking after your own well-being during kind of these times that others potentially could benefit from?
Yeah, I think for me it's just really going back to like the smaller things in life, the smaller joys or the basic things. I've always been an athlete, so I actually started playing a lot of different sports and started doing different things. And on a day-to-day basis, pre-COVID, we never really got a chance to do everything. So even just sitting home with your family and playing a board game, something like that, it's interesting, and I think people bonded a lot more and connected with each other during this time also. So I think not being too worried about when my next international trip is going to be, or when's the next time I'm going to travel somewhere, just focusing on the very small things, I think that's helped me. And also I feel it's just been a phase where you can grow a lot. I mean, you can look at it and say that you can be very negative about it, and it is a tough time for the world, but I also think I had a lot of growth because I was starting COVID, I was in a different role to what I'm doing today. While everything was same in terms of the industry and the work line, but it's just what I did in that role versus what I do today. Uh, I think I actually ended up quitting my job once COVID began and decided that I want to do something on my own. So it was a phase where I took a lot of time to think. And as I said, just going back to basics, just kind of becoming aligned with your own values and what you like, what you dislike. Based on that, I decided what I want to do. So, in fact, I would actually say if I didn't have that time, I probably wouldn't have even enrolled for this program. So, uh, even though it's just not a very nice time for the entire world, and I've been through COVID myself, so I know how horrible it can be. But I do also sort of value what came out of this. Uh, so yeah, I think just sticking to your basics, sticking to the simple things, and just enjoying those helps you a lot. And don't worry so much about the bigger things right now.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was great. So I'm happy with all of those responses. You smashed it. You were
Perfect.
brilliant. Do you want to do anything again, or are you happy with my kind of feedback there and we can stop recording? Do you think that sounds good?
No, this is perfect.
Great.
I'm
I'm
good.
just going to
Yeah.
stop recording now.